The crowded diner was alive with chatter and clinking silverware when suddenly a sharp gasp cut through the noise. All eyes turned to the powerful woman at the center of the room, FBI Chief Linda Carter, clutching her throat, struggling for air. Panic spread, but no one moved. No one except for a young homeless black boy standing by the door. Without hesitation, he rushed forward, his small hand steady as he performed the Heimlich maneuver. A moment later, a chunk of food flew onto the table, and Linda inhaled sharply, gasping for breath. The room was silent. Relief turned to shock as murmurs spread, some whispering praise, others muttering racist remarks. That's when Linda turned to the onlookers, her piercing gaze locking onto the ones who doubted the boy's worth. What she said next silenced the entire diner, leaving them frozen in place. You won't believe how this moment changed everything. Linda wiped her mouth, her breath still uneven, but her eyes locked onto the boy. He stood frozen, his thin frame tense as if bracing for something worse than the choking that almost took her life. The whispers around the room grew louder, some murmuring disbelief, others scoffing, as if refusing to accept what had just happened. A man near the counter sneered. Didn't think someone like him could be useful. Another chuckled under his breath. Linda's jaw tightened. She turned, straightening her blazer, her voice cutting through the tension. Someone like him. Her words were slow, deliberate. You mean the boy who saved my life while the rest of you just watched. The boy flinched, his gaze dropping to the floor. He was used to being invisible, until now. But why was he here? And what had life thrown at him to bring him to this exact moment? The room was still, the weight of Linda's words pressing against the air. The boy shuffled his feet, uncomfortable with the attention. He wasn't looking for gratitude. He had just acted. It was instinct. But now, standing in front of this powerful woman, he felt smaller than ever. His stomach growled, a sharp reminder of why he had even stepped into the diner in the first place. Linda studied him carefully. His clothes were torn, his face smudged with dirt, and yet his eyes held something familiar, determination. She had seen that look before, in kids who had to grow up too fast, in people who had been underestimated their entire lives. The manager cleared his throat. Ma'am, do you know this boy? His tone was edged with something unspoken, something ugly. Linda glanced at the boy again. Not yet, she said. But I'm about to. The room bristled. No one expected that. The boy's breath hitched. He wasn't sure what Linda meant, but the way she said it sent a ripple through the room. People exchanged uneasy glances. Some scoffed under their breath, while others just stared. He had spent years being ignored, shoved aside, treated like nothing. And now, in a place where he wasn't even welcome, the most powerful person in the room was standing up for him. Linda pulled out her wallet and placed a bill on the counter. Get him something to eat, she said, her voice steady. The manager hesitated, glancing around as if looking for someone to back him up. He can't just. He just did, Linda interrupted. And unless you'd like me to ask why you had time to judge him, but not help me when I was choking, I'd suggest you move. The silence was deafening. The boy swallowed hard. He had no idea what was happening. But he knew one thing. Everything was about to change. The manager's face tightened, but he grabbed a menu and slid it toward the boy. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for it, like he couldn't believe this was real. Food. A meal that didn't come from a trash can or someone's leftover plate. He mumbled a quiet thank you, but Linda wasn't done. She turned back to the room, her sharp gaze sweeping over the onlookers. Some shifted uncomfortably, avoiding her eyes. Others crossed their arms, stubborn in their silence. But just as the tension reached its peak, the diner's door swung open. A tall man in a dark suit strode in, his expression unreadable. His eyes flicked between Linda and the boy before settling on her. "Chief Carter," he said, his voice firm. "We need to talk. Now." Linda exhaled slowly, as if she'd been expecting this. The boy tensed. Something wasn't right. Whatever was happening wasn't just about him. It was bigger. And it was only getting started. Linda held the man's gaze, her expression unreadable. She knew who he was. Agent Reynolds, one of her top investigators. If he was here, something was wrong. The boy clenched his fists. Every time things started looking up, life had a way of yanking him back down. He braced himself, expecting the worst. Reynolds stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We've been looking for him," he said, nodding toward the boy. "But not for the reasons you think." Linda's stomach tightened. "Explain." Reynolds hesitated, then pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. He witnessed something dangerous. A crime linked to one of our biggest cases. And now the people responsible are looking for him. The boy's breath caught in his throat. His mind raced back to that night, the shadowy figures, the hushed voices, the flash of something he shouldn't have seen. He had been running ever since. Linda squared her shoulders. "Then he's coming with me." Reynolds blinked. "Chief." "He saved my life," she said, her voice unwavering. "Now it's my turn." The boy looked up at her, his eyes wide. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just surviving. He had someone standing beside him. But neither of them realized the danger was much closer than they thought. Linda placed a firm hand on the boy's shoulder, guiding him toward the door. The diner remained silent, the weight of everything that had just happened still sinking in. The boy wasn't sure where he was going, but for the first time in years, he wasn't alone. Outside, the cold air bit at his skin, but he barely noticed. "What happens now?" he asked, his voice small. Linda glanced down at him, then at Reynolds. "First, we get you somewhere safe. Then we figure out the rest." The boy exhaled, a quiet relief washing over him. He had spent so long running, hiding, expecting the worst. But now someone believed in him. Someone saw him. As they walked away, a shadow lingered in the distance, watching. The danger wasn't over yet. But for now, he had a chance. A real chance at something better. And that was enough.